Welcome back to Rhythm Guitar Book 2. This book focuses on open chords, strumming, and fingerstyle patterns. You can watch all these videos for free, but it's going to be a lot easier to learn if you have your own copy of Rhythm Guitar 2 that you can read from and write in. So I'll leave a link for that in the description. We're on pages 29 through 31. We have two new chords, the D minor chord and the G7 chord, and I'm also going to show you some alternating bass patterns. On page 29, we have two new chords, D minor and G7. Let's check out the D minor first. First finger on first fret, first string. Second finger on second fret on the third string. Third finger on the third fret, second string. And fourth string open, so this is a four-string chord, just like your D7 is. So all of your bass notes for any patterns will be on the fourth string. Your G7 chord is a six-string chord. Have first finger on first fret, first string, second finger on second fret, fifth string, third finger on third fret, sixth string. And since it's a six-string chord, you'll be playing the sixth string for all of your bass notes. Let's take a look at some of these common fingers and similar shapes. First of all, the D minor and G7 have the first finger in common, so when you're switching between D minor and G7, keep that first finger anchored and move your other two fingers. At first glance, it may not look like your A minor and D minor have similar shapes, but really they do. Let's look at an A minor. To get to the D minor, all you have to do is keep that same shape from your A minor, move everything down one string, and then your third finger moves out to the third fret for the D minor. And your C and G7 have similar shapes. Here's your C chord. The G7 looks a whole lot like the C chord, it's just more spread out. Fingers 2 and 3 move up one string each, and finger 1 moves down a string. So that's a good way of visualizing that G7. We've been using fingers 1, 2, and 3 for the G chord, but I want to show you another fingering that works pretty well too, especially now that we're learning the G7 chord. So here's our fingers 1, 2, 3 for the G chord. I also suggest learning how to play it with fingers 2, 3, and 4. With your pinky on that bottom string. This is a good fingering to use when you're going between G and C because here's the G chord fingered this way. Fingers 2 and 3 just have to move down a string each to get to the C chord. And if you ever need to switch quickly between G and G7, you definitely want to use fingers 2, 3, 4 for the G. So you can just switch back and forth between your pinky and your first finger. And if you're using fingers 2, 3, and 4 for the G, and you go to E minor, you're definitely going to want to use fingers 2 and 3 for the E minor. So you're gonna keep finger 2 in common this time instead of finger 1 in common when you're using fingers 1, 2, 3 for the G. Some people really like playing the G chord this way, and some people prefer playing fingers 1, 2, and 3. I think it's good to know either way so you can be flexible. I personally like to use fingers 2, 3, and 4 most often, but at times I like to use 1, 2, 3 as well. On page 30, we have a new concept called alternating bass. Up until now, you've been playing the same bass note every time when you play a chord, say an E minor, always playing that sixth string. And that bass note you've been playing is called the root of the chord. That's the note the chord is built on. You can add a little bit of interest to this pattern by using what's called alternating bass. In other words, instead of using the same bass note every time, we're going to play your main bass note on beat 1, always play your main bass note on beat 1, and then an alternate bass note on beat 3. Now when I play like this, I want to make sure I'm really only hitting the bottom 3 strings when I strum, so that alternate bass note has a chance to ring out. At the bottom of page 30, we have a series of chords showing you what alternate bass notes you can use with those chords. So any chord from what I call the A family, for instance A minor, and you'll learn other A chords in this book as well, 5th string is going to be your root or your main bass note, and you can use your 4th string as an alternate bass. So that's bass and alternate. And for A minors or other A chords, you can also use 6th string as your alternate. Either of those sounds fine. Just make sure you're hitting your main bass note or the root of your chord on beat 1. The next chord we're going to look at is C. We're going to change a finger in this one. So 5th string is your normal bass. We're going to go to 6th string for our alternate bass, but you're also going to have to move your 3rd finger to that 3rd fret on the 6th string. Now you definitely don't want to re-strum the 5th string when you do that, because you're going to get a note that does not belong in that C chord because you took that finger away. So there's your main, alternate. Then we have our D family chords. In other words, any kind of D chords. You've learned D7 and D minor so far. 4th string is your main note, your main bass note, and 5th string is your alternate. 4 and 5. Same goes for your D minor. And again, always make sure you hit your main bass note or your root note on beat 1, and then play the alternate bass note if you have time. The bottom row here we have E chords. That's going to be string 6 and then 5 as your alternate. And same for your E7. And your E minor. And then we have our G chords. That's going to be strings 6 and 4. So we're going to skip a string there. Our main bass note is on the 6th string. And then our alternate bass is on the 4th string. Now, if you accidentally hit the 5th string, it doesn't sound terrible, but a better option is 6 and 4. And that goes for your G7 as well. 6 and 4. So far I've shown you alternating bass patterns with our bass strum pattern. On page 31 we have some other options. If we're in 3/4 time, you can only do bass and an alternate bass if you have 2 or more measures. So I'm just going to do all these on E minor to save time. So it would be bass, 2, 3, alternate, 2, 3. But if that E minor was just one measure, you wouldn't have time for that alternating bass. And then we can use alternating bass with fingerstyle patterns as well. We have a bass note built in just because we always play it with our thumb. So number R40, this is our Pima pattern, P-I-M-A. This would be P-I-M-A, then your alternate bass. Now for this particular pattern, because it lasts an entire measure, you can only do alternating bass if you have 2 or more measures of the same chord. Now Number R41, that's our PAMI pattern, P-A-M-I, same thing, P-A-M-I, then your alternate bass. And number R42, this is the first 3/4 pattern you learned that was P-I-M-A, so you go main bass note, alternate bass note, main, alternate, and then one of my favorite patterns, I guess you'd call it P-MAMI, P-I-M-A-M-I pattern, main, alternate, main, alternate. Your assignment is to practice the new D minor and G7 chords on page 29. Practice them individually, then practice switching back and forth between the D minor and the G7, and then practice the D minor and the G7 with other chords as well. And also practice your new alternating bass patterns on pages 30 and 31. Once you're comfortable with these new chords and these alternating bass patterns, I'll see you on page 32. We've got a couple new rhythm charts that include your new alternating bass, your new chords, and your new tempo markings, which you learned about on page 28.